The wind screamed through the broken trees, sharp like knives, cold like death. Snow fell heavy across the land, hiding the world in white. But under a cracked piece of metal, two shapes huddled close. A mother, skin pale and blue, held her child. Tight against her chest, she was an alien, not from Earth, not from anywhere safe anymore. Her name was Lyria. And her little girl was all she had left. The child coughed, tiny and weak. Wrapped in rags made from her mother's clothes, there was no food, no water, no fire, only cold and fear. Lyria's eyes were heavy. Her lips cracked, but she did not sleep. She took another piece of her clothing and fed it into the small fire she had made. The flames hissed, hungry for more. Her arms were bare now, her legs frozen. But the child in her arms felt warm for now. She whispered a lullaby from her world, a song about stars and safety. Her voice shook, but she kept singing. "I will not let you die," she said softly. "I don't care if I do." The fire burned low, almost gone. Lyria looked down at her last piece of cloth, her scarf, the one with her family symbol. She kissed it, then fed it to the fire. She held her child tighter as the warmth touched her one last time. Tears rolled down, her cheeks freezing as they fell. She closed her eyes, and for a moment, the world was silent. Then footsteps, crunch, crunch, through the snow. Lyria didn't hear them. Not at first. Her mind was fading, slipping into sleep, but the child did. Her small eyes opened, wide and scared. She let out a cry, a weak little sound. The footsteps stopped, then ran faster. The snow was kicked aside, and a man's voice shouted, "Hey, is someone there?" A shape appeared through the storm, tall, wrapped in thick clothing, a human with goggles and a breathing mask. He looked down at the mother and child, frozen and broken. "Oh no," he whispered, and dropped to his knees. He touched Lyria's face. It was ice cold. Then he felt the child, still alive, but barely. "I need to move fast," he said, mostly to himself. He took off his heavy coat and wrapped it around the child first. Then he pulled out a thermal blanket from his pack and wrapped it around the mother. He picked both of them up, one in each arm. "I don't know who you are," he said, breathing hard, "but I'm not leaving you here." He walked fast. As fast as the snow allowed, the wind pushed against him. The cold tried to steal their lives, but he kept going. His boots sinking deep into the snow, far in the distance, hidden in the trees, was a small Shelteran old survival pod from a past war. It was his home now, and their only hope. Minutes felt like hours. His muscles screamed. But he didn't stop. When he finally reached the door, he kicked it open, snow flying in behind him. He laid the mother on a cot, the child in a heating bed. He turned on the thermal lights and wrapped both in warming fabric. Steam rose from their bodies as ice began to melt. The man took off his mask and revealed a tired but kind face. He checked the child's pulse. It was weak, but there, he turned to the mother. Her breathing was slow, almost invisible. He leaned closer and said softly, "Come on, you made it this far. Don't give up now." Lyria's fingers twitched. Her eyes blinked open slowly. She saw the human's face. Blurry at first, she tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. "Why? Help me." The man didn't answer right away. He just looked at her and said, because no one else would. Lyria looked down at her child. Now, safe in warmth and light, she felt the fire again, not on her skin, but in her heart. She had given everything, even her clothes, to keep her daughter warm. Now someone had given something back, as her eyes closed once more, this time in real sleep. She held her daughter's hand and whispered, "Live, little star." Live, outside. The storm still raged, but inside, for the first time in days, there was warmth. There was hope, and there was a human who had made all the difference. The storm outside kept howling like a wild beast, but inside the shelter. It was quiet. A soft hum from the heaters filled the room. The small alien child, Mina, slept peacefully in a heated pod. Her mother, Lyria, lay on the cot nearby. Weak but breathing, the human, Daniel, sat in a chair between them, watching, thinking, and remembering. He didn't know why he stopped in that snowfield. Didn't know why he searched the crash site. Something had pulled him there like a whisper in the wind. Now, 2 lives depended on him. And that was no small thing. He stood slowly, his back aching from the weight he carried earlier. He walked to the supply wall and took out water and a nutrition gel pack. Gently, he touched Lyria's shoulder. Her eyes blinked open, slowly and suspiciously. "You need to eat," he said, voice soft but firm. She looked at the packet like it was poison. "I'm not your enemy," he added. "Just a man with a warm room and a bit of food." Lyria took the packet, but didn't say thank you. She drank it slowly, never taking her eyes off him. Her hands shook from weakness, but her stare was still strong. "Why?" she finally asked, her voice rough. "Why would a human help me?" Daniel shrugged. "Maybe because your daughter cried. Maybe because you were freezing to death. Maybe because I'm tired of watching people die." Lyria looked away, silent again. She didn't understand this man she had seen. Humans in war, they were loud, cruel, full of fire and bullets. But this one had given her his coat. This one had carried her in his arms. Mina stirred in the pod, letting out a small whimper. Daniel rushed over, adjusted the heat, and gently tucked her in tighter. He smiled at her, almost like she was his own. Lyria watched this, her chest tight with confusion. She didn't know if she should trust him, but her daughter looked safe. That was all that mattered for now. Daniel came back and sat down again. He opened a small metal box near his chair and pulled out a photo. It showed a group of soldiers, young, smiling. Dressed in Earth military suits, he stared at it for a while before sliding it back into the box. "You were a fighter," Lyria said suddenly. Daniel nodded. "Long time ago." "I lost everyone in that last mission," he added quietly. "Then I walked away." Lyria frowned. "People like you don't just walk away, Daniels." Eyes were calm, but there was pain behind them. "Only if you've seen too much," he replied. "Only if you've had enough." He stood and walked to the storage unit, pulling out a folded suit. It was basic thermal wear. Not much, but better than nothing. "I found this," he said, offering it to her. "It's clean." Lyria took it slowly, surprised. Her body was still cold, covered in burns from the frost. But the kindness in his voice warmed her more than anything. "I don't know what you lost," Daniel said, turning away, "but I know what I've lost. I won't lose more if I can help it." That night, they stayed quiet. Daniel watched over the shelter's cameras, eyes scanning for movement. Lyria lay awake in the corner, wearing the suit, holding her daughter's tiny hand, then a beep. Daniel leaned in closer to the screen. A drone signal had passed near the valley, probably a patrol. He turned to Lyria, his voice low. "Are you being hunted?" She didn't answer right away, her lips pressed together. Then she gave a small nod. "My kind. They saw me as weak," she whispered. "I protected my child when they told me to abandon her. They said I was no longer fit to be part of the colony." Daniel's jaw tightened. He had heard stories like that before. Too many leaders in too many places who cared more about rules than lives. "Then you're not going back to them," he said, standing up. "You stay here, both of you. You're safe as long as I breathe." Lyria stared at him, stunned. She had been kicked out by her own people. Now this human, a stranger, was offering protection without asking anything in return. She lowered her head slowly. For the first time since the crash, she felt something strange. Hope. The heaters buzzed quietly, and the lights dimmed for night mode. Daniel took his seat again. But this time, his eyes stayed open. He didn't rest, not yet, because now, this wasn't just his shelter anymore. Now, it was a promise that he chose to keep. The next morning, the sky outside the shelter was gray and heavy. The snow had stopped, but the cold remained like a ghost inside the shelter. Warmth buzzed softly through the walls. Mina was awake, her small hands reaching for the light that glowed above her bed. She smiled, weak but alive. Lyria sat beside her, rubbing warmth into her fingers. The new suit Daniel gave her fit loosely, but it was dry and warm. She looked at her daughter's face and whispered, "Still breathing, little star?" Then her eyes moved to the other side of the room, where the human sat cleaning a weapon. A quiet, careful man, full of mystery. Daniel didn't say much that morning. He moved with a soldier's calm, always checking things twice. The food packs, the battery levels. The door locks especially. The door locks. Lyria watched him, still. Unsure if she should thank him or fear him, he noticed her staring and gave a half smile. "Still don't trust me?" he asked, not looking up. Lyria stayed silent. She wanted to say yes, but her daughter's full belly said no. She wanted to say no, but the fear in her heart still said yes. "I understand," Daniel said after a pause. "You don't know?" "Me. You don't have to trust me, but you do have to stay smart. There's more danger out there than just the cold." He tossed her a small black device-on old heat mask. "Put that on if you ever go outside," he said. "It hides your thermal signature." Lyria turned it in her hands, impressed. This man was not just a survivor. He was trained, prepared. "Why help me?" she asked again, voice lower than before. Daniel paused, then said, "Because you're still asking that question. If you were someone who deserved to be left behind, you wouldn't be wondering why I helped." Lyria looked down, ashamed, back in her colony. Kindness was seen as weakness. Helping others was a mistake, especially if they were slow or sick. She had been warned, leave the child or be exiled. She chose exile, and now here she was, alive only because of a stranger. Suddenly, a loud beep echoed from the console. Daniel rushed over and tapped the screen. A red signal blinked movement outside, near the tree line. Lyria stood quickly, holding Mina close. "What is it?" "Motion sensor?" Daniel muttered. "Something's moving out there." He pulled up the camera feed. On the screen, a shape moved through the snow, too tall to be an animal. "Too slow to be a drone, scavenger maybe," he said. Or, worse, he grabbed a small rifle and handed Lyria a flashblade. "I'm not leaving you unarmed," he said, "but keep quiet. And don't open the door unless it's me." Then he stepped outside, disappearing into the gray fog. Lyria closed the door behind him and locked it. She held the flashblade tightly, her hands shaking. She had been trained in combat, but that was a long time ago. Her mind was full of fear, but she had to protect her child. She moved to the corner, keeping Mina close, ready to strike if needed. Time passed slowly. Minutes felt like hours. She stared at the door, expecting it to explode open at any moment, but then it clicked. Daniel stepped back in, breathing hard, snow on his boots. "False alarm," he said, lowering his weapon. "Just a broken scout drone drifting in the wind. But someone might be watching." Lyria relaxed, only slightly, still holding the blade. She asked, "Are we safe here?" Daniel shook his head. "Not for long. I have a plan," he said, walking to the map on the wall. "There's a range across the mountain to the south. Past that is neutral territory. No one goes. They're not humans. Not your kind." Lyria looked at the map, then at her child. "Can she make that journey?" Daniel nodded. "If we move slow, rest often, and stick together." Lyria looked into his eyes. There was no lie there. Only a strange truth she was still trying to understand. This human didn't ask questions about her past. he didn't demand thanks or loyalty or answers. He simply helped, again and again, that night. She sat beside the sleeping Mina and whispered a quiet promise. "We will walk together, all three of us, if he falls. I will carry him, and for thee." First time since the crash, Lyria didn't dream of death. She dreamed of escape, of survival, of a path where maybe, just maybe, this human was meant to walk with them. 3 days passed in silence. Snow still covered the land outside, but the winds were calmer now inside the shelter. Life slowly returned to Lyria's pale face. Mina could walk again, her steps small, but stronger each day. Daniel worked quietly, checking gear, sealing bags, and studying the map. They were getting ready to move. But not yet, not until Lyria's strength fully returned. She tried to help, learning how the heating systems worked. She even cooked once, using a mix of earth rations and alien herbs Daniel had gathered. He called it strange stew, but smiled as he ate every bite. Still, the air in the shelter was heavy. Lyria knew danger was close, even if she couldn't see it yet. Her people were strict cold, like the winter they left her in. They did not allow disobedience, and she had broken one of their highest orders. Never protect the weak. That night, while Mina slept and Daniel cleaned his rifle, Lyria sat near the door. Her sharp ears twitched. She stood slowly and whispered, "Something's wrong." Daniel looked up, instantly alert. The motion scanner was quiet, but she was certain. "They found me," she said quietly. Then a loud thump hit the shelter wall. Daniel moved fast, hitting the emergency light switch, plunging the room into red shadows. He handed Lyria her blade and motioned toward Mina. Lyria grabbed the child and held her close, backing into the shadows. The door shook with a powerful slam. A voice shouted from outside in a harsh alien tongue. "Criminal Lyria, by law of the Flame Order, surrender yourself," Mina whimpered, clinging to her mother. Lyria's face went white. Daniel raised his rifle and hissed, "You know them?" She nodded, whispering, "Execution Squad." The door shook again, bolts snapping. Daniel pulled out a flash grenade and whispered, "When I throw this, cover your daughter's eyes. Then run to the back room, don't look back." "But what about just go?" he said, already moving. With a loud clang, the door burst open. Figures in black armor stormed inside, rifles raised, eyes glowing under their masks. Daniel threw the grenade and turned away. A bright white flash filled the room, followed by shouting and confusion. Lyria ran with Mina to the back room. Locking the door behind them, she heard shots, grunts, and the sound of bodies falling, then nothing. Silence. Lyria held her breath, pressing her ear to the cold wall. Then the door clicked, slowly opening. Daniel stood there, his arm bleeding, but alive. "They're down," he said, voice tired. "3 of them." Lyria stared at him in shock. "You fought for me." Daniel wiped blood from his forehead and muttered, "I didn't have much choice. They kicked my door in." She stepped forward, eyes wide. "They came for me. But you stood in the way." He looked at her, steady and serious. "I told you," he said. "You're safe as long as I breathe." Lyria felt something shift inside her chest. She had seen death, betrayal, cruelty, but never this. Never. Someone who chose to fight without needing to. Never someone who didn't walk away when things got hard. She whispered, "You could have given me up." Daniel shrugged. "Would have left a bad taste in my mouth. Besides," he added, glancing at Mina, "she called me Dan." That name, simple as it was, meant everything to Lyria now. She touched his shoulder, gently, then noticed the wound on his arm. "You're hurt," she said. "Worried." "I've been worse," he replied. But his knees almost gave out. Lyria helped him sit, cleaning the wound with warm water and wrapping it tightly. Mina came closer and kissed Daniel's forehead, her tiny fingers brushing his cheek. He chuckled softly. That's better than any medicine. They sat in silence for a while, 3 survivors, once strangers, now something else. Lyria leaned against Daniel's good shoulder, and for the first time, she whispered, "Thank you." Outside, the snow began to fall again, covering the bodies in the white cold, but inside, the fire was burning strong. Not from wood or power cells, but from something deeper. Trust, a bond stronger than blood. They would leave. Soon, the world out there was still dangerous, still full of enemies, but now, I think they would face it together, not as alien and human, but as a family built by choice, not by fate. The morning after the attack was still and quiet. Snow drifted down slowly from the sky like falling feathers. The bodies outside were gone, buried in the snow by Daniel before sunrise. He did not want Mina to see them inside the shelter. Things were quiet too. Lyria sat by the heater, wrapping fresh cloth around Daniel's injured arm. Her fingers moved carefully, but her eyes were full of questions. Daniel didn't say much, only flinched once when she tied the band too tight. "You didn't have to fight for us," she said again. He gave a tired smile. "You keep saying that, and I keep telling you I chose to." Mina sat nearby on a soft blanket, chewing on dried fruit and watching them with wide eyes. She had learned many new things in the last few days. Fire, food, warmth, and a human who smiled at her like she mattered. Suddenly, she crawled across the floor to Daniel. She climbed onto his lap, ignoring his wound, and hugged him tight. Then she looked up into his eyes and said softly, Daniel." Froze, his eyes flicked toward Lyria, unsure what to say, but Lyria's lips parted in shock. That word, Dawn, was not just a sound. It was the word for father in her native tongue. She hadn't taught Mina that word since the crash, but the child had remembered and chosen to give it to him. Lyria's heart beat fast. She didn't know how to feel grateful. Confused, afraid, she looked at Daniel, expecting him to laugh or correct the child, but he didn't. He just smiled gently and said, "Yeah, I'm here, little one." Lyria looked away, hiding the shimmer in her eyes. Her daughter had chosen to give this man the name of a father, and somehow it didn't feel wrong, it felt right. Later that day, Daniel opened a dusty locker near the back of the shelter. He pulled out an old pack full of dried seeds, cloth, and a small toy cube. He handed the cube to Mina, who stared at it like it was magic. "It's a puzzle." Daniel said, "Turn it, and it shows stars." Mina turned it once, and a soft blue light lit up the small room. Tiny stars filled the ceiling. Lyria gasped quietly. She hadn't seen starlight in weeks. Her daughter reached for the lights with both hands, laughing, and in that laughter, something inside Lyria healed just a little more. "You didn't keep this for yourself?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "I didn't think I'd ever need it again, but maybe she does." As the stars faded, Lyria stood and walked to Daniel. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture of deep respect in her culture. "You are more than human," she whispered. "You are more than what I feared." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Well, I try," she smiled. A real smile this time. It surprised them both. Later that evening, as they prepared for rest, Daniel sat at his old desk writing something in a small book. Lyria peeked over his shoulder, curious. "What is that?" "A journal," he replied. "I write down memories, in case I forget them." She nodded slowly. "That is a strange but beautiful thing." He turned the book toward her, showing his latest entry on the page. He had written 3 simple words. Lyria Mina, home. She stared at the words, her breath catching in her throat. "Home," she repeated softly. "No one's written that word beside my name in a long time." Daniel shrugged. "Well, maybe it's time someone did." She sat beside him, close this time. Their arms touched, and she didn't pull away. "I don't know what happens after we leave here," she said quietly. "I don't either," he replied. "But we'll figure it out together." she added. He nodded. Yeah, together that night. Mina slept curled between them, one small hand resting on Lyria's chest, the other gripping Daniel's finger. The heaters hummed softly. The wind outside whistled low. But inside, there was peace. Real peace, not from safety, but from connection. Not from comfort, but from choice. In this shelter deep in snow and silence, a mother who had been cast out, a child who had nearly frozen, and a man who had given up on everything had found something new. A bond, a name, and maybe, just maybe, a family. Asterisk, the sky was changing. For weeks, it had stayed the same gray, heavy, endless. But now, thin rays of sunlight were slipping through the clouds. The snow outside had started to melt, just a little. Drip, drip, drip from the roof of the shelter, down into the soft ground. Inside, Lyria stood near the window, watching, her arms crossed. Her eyes full of thought. It's time, she whispered to herself, behind her. Daniel packed supplies into a heavy travel bag. Mina ran in circles, her energy returning like spring itself. She wore a soft scarf around her neck torn from one of Daniel's old shirts. She had picked it herself, calling it her warm thing. Daniel had smiled and let her keep it. Lyria turned toward him. We're going, aren't we? Daniel nodded. We can't stay. They know you're alive. He said, and they might send more, and I've been here too long. Already, Lyria said nothing for a moment, then softly added, I never thought I'd miss this place. Daniel chuckled, a rusty pod in the snow. She shook her head. It's not the place, it's what happened inside it. They finished packing together blankets, food packs, tools, extra clothes. Daniel took out a thick cloth and wrapped a few small memory items inside. One was the glowing puzzle cube Mina loved so much, he placed it gently into his side pocket. Outside, the air was cold, but not biting. The snow crunched under their boots as they stepped out for the first time together. Mina sat on Daniel's back in a soft carrier, her arms around his neck. Lyria walked beside them, eyes scanning the trees and hills ahead. The mountains in the south rose like giants in the distance. That was their goal. Past those peaks lay the border to neutral space. No patrols, no wars, no orders to abandon the weak, just freedom. They moved slowly, careful of deep snow and hidden ice. Daniel showed Lyria how to use a scanner to read ground density. She showed him how to read the sky for weather shifts. Together, they moved like a team, like they had done this for years. On the third night, they found shelter in a rocky cave. Daniel started a fire while Lyria fed Mina warm soup. The girl curled up between them and fell asleep fast. Lyria looked at Daniel and asked, Do you ever think about going back? He shook his head. There's nothing left behind me. She looked down. Same for me. He leaned against the wall and added, But there's something ahead now. In the days that followed, the snow faded fast. Green began to return to the edges of the forest. Birds flew overhead, strange and colorful. It felt like the world itself was trying to help them, but the road wasn't easy. They crossed frozen rivers, climbed steep ridges, and hid from flying scouts overhead. One night, Daniel collapsed from exhaustion. His body hit the ground, heavy. As stone, Lyria rushed to him, pulling Mina from his back and checking his pulse. He was alive but burning with fever. She dragged him to a hollow under a rock ledge and lit a fire with shaking hands. Mina sat beside him, scared and quiet, all night. Lyria fed him water and kept him warm. She covered him with both blankets and even gave him her own coat. You gave us everything, she whispered. Now let me give back. By morning, his fever broke. He opened his eyes and saw her face, tired, messy, but strong. You didn't leave? He asked, confused. She smiled gently. We don't leave each other now. He sat up slowly, still weak. Lyria gave him a small piece of fruit. Mina climbed into his lap, hugging him without saying a word. his arms wrapped around her carefully. Later, that day, when they reached the top of a hill, Daniel pointed ahead. "There," he said, voice full of hope. "That line of trees marks the border." Lyria looked, blinking tears away. They were almost there. One more day, maybe two. She placed her hand on his shoulder and whispered, "You didn't just carry us, you carried our future." The sun was rising for the first time in weeks. Its golden light touched their faces without the bite of cold wind. Lyria stood at the edge of a steep hill, her boots buried in soft grass instead of snow. Below her, a narrow river glittered. And beyond that, just beyond, were the signal towers of the neutral zone. It was real. They had made it. Behind her, Daniel knelt beside Mina. Helping her drink water from his canister, the little girl laughed as the breeze blew her scarf into her face. She grabbed it and giggled, shouting, "Dan." Daniel smiled, brushing her messy hair back with one hand. "We're almost there." "Little star," he said. "Almost home." Lyria turned and looked at them. The image burned into her heart. A human, a child, and an alien mother. All broken, all unwanted, yet still together, still standing. They climbed down slowly, careful of loose stones and sharp rocks. The path led them to a checkpoint gate, rusted from time, but still operational. A human woman in a dark uniform stepped out, holding a tablet. She raised her hand. "State your names." Daniel answered first. "Daniel Reyes, civilian." He pointed to Lyria. "This is Lyria of the Serrani." Then to the girl, "And this is Mina, her daughter." The officer looked surprised, her eyes shifting to the alien mother and child. Lyria stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. "We seek asylum, shelter." The officer narrowed her eyes. "Your Serrani, Lyria, didn't back down." "I protected my child," she said, "and was exiled for it. I won't let her die for their laws." The officer said nothing for a moment. Then she looked at Daniel. "And you? What is your reason?" Daniel looked down at Mina, then at Lyria. He didn't think for long. "My reason?" he said. "They're my family." The officer blinked, shocked. "Your family?" Daniel nodded. "I made that choice when I carried them through the snow. I'm not going back without them." There was silence at the gate. Mina reached out and held Daniel's hand tightly. Lyria placed her hand over his. They waited. Then the officer stepped back and opened the gate. "Welcome to Haven," she said quietly. "All three of you." They stepped through together. Beyond the gate was a small village, houses built from mixed tech and wood. People from different species walking side by side. No guards, no fences, just life. Children played near a fountain. Traders sold fruit and tools. A healer tended to a wounded soldier with 6 arms. It was not perfect, but it was free, it was safe. They found a room to rent, small but warm. With soft lights and a real bed, Mina ran from wall to wall, amazed at the curtains and pillows. Daniel collapsed into a chair, his legs finally giving out. Lyria stood in the doorway, watching it all, her eyes wide with quiet wonder. Later that night, Daniel lit a small fire in the corner stove. Lyria made soup from ingredients given to them by a kind merchant. Mina fell asleep early, holding her glowing puzzle cube against her chest as the fire crackled. Daniel turned to Lyria. "Do you think we'll stay here?" Lyria nodded slowly. "If they'll have us," he smiled, "then we'll stay." She looked down at Mina, sleeping peacefully. "She calls you father," Lyria said, voice soft. Daniel didn't answer right away. Then he whispered, "It feels right." Lyria moved closer and took his hand in hers. "No one gave us this," she said. "We built it." Daniel looked into her eyes. "I'd build it again, every day." They sat together in the quiet, firelight dancing across the walls. Outside, the night was calm, stars glowing like tiny lanterns. The journey had ended, but something new. Had begun a new name, a new bond, and a new family. In a galaxy that once tried to leave them behind, they had found something stronger than survival. They had found each other,